I think the club has made progress. It's been a little bit frustrating, I think, from our point of view as well, because it has taken, perhaps longer than we would have liked. But to some extent, I think where we're at the moment, it would still be what I would call necessarily long. I think one of clearly the awkward parts of looking at the management situation for next season has been the need to resolve the playoff issue. So I think it was important in terms of what we think is needed for the season coming up, and in terms of, quite frankly, the market for available candidates, that we did resolve that before making any progress in the negotiations.
Can you take from that, though, that Stuart won't be here as part of the setup moving forward?
No, I wouldn't say that. I think Stuart is still involved as a possible candidate.
In terms of other candidates, Mark Warburton has been heavily touted. Is he someone you've spoken to? Is he someone you're considering?
There is a committee. I certainly haven't spoken to him, but I think there are a number of people who the committee have spoken to, a number of candidates, and we're hoping to make progress. I would say possibly within about a week we might be in a position to make an announcement.
In terms of other issues, have you moved further forward in terms of relisting the company, or again another share issue at some stage?
I've got a meeting in London at the end of this week regarding progressing the listing of the company. We have made progress, and I think it is fair to say it will happen. It's just a question of the timing now.
Do you know a timescale roughly when you look to do that, or is that still too hard to pin down?
It's a process that takes months. There is an actual process there in terms of issuing prospectuses and getting through the normal requirements of a listing. But so I would say it would probably be a matter of about 3 to 4 months before it was complete.
Last time we spoke to you, you spoke of the need to still come to a settlement with Alison McCoist. Has that moved on since you last heard from you?
No, I think the comment I made last time was that there's no issue with Ali McCoist. I think Ali has a contract, and the club has to honour the contract. So I think as far as we are concerned, we will honour our obligations to Ali.
Dave, can I ask you about the managerial position now? Mark asked you just now. Do you have a favourite candidate to be manager of Rangers next season?
Yeah, not at this time.
When do you expect to have that? Paul Murray said at the weekend that he expected a position, someone to be appointed by this Friday.
I think Friday is too soon, but I would say if you're looking at a time frame, perhaps a week, slightly more than a week. I would imagine it'll be into next week rather than Friday. I can't see the process being complete by Friday.
Can you quantify a number of candidates that you've spoken to?
I think at the moment there are probably, I'd say probably 5 realistic candidates that I think that might fit the bill. Obviously with a club like Rangers, there's a lot of names do come forward, but I think that we've got some clarity as I think to what we require over the next couple of years. So it's very important that we somehow balance the obvious urgency of making an appointment with the need to get it right, because we're looking for an appointment that's going to see us through for the next 3 years.
And would this candidate be a head coach working within a structure, or would he be the manager as such with overall control?
I think he'd be the manager, but a coach in the sense that if you look at where we are with the squad, as you're all aware, there's 11 players have gone out. So there is going to have to be a substantial rebuilding of the squad, and I think that what we're going to do between now and the close season is try and build up the squad with a level of player I think that we think will allow us to comfortably compete in the Championship, but players who we think could also compete in the Premier League next season.
Are you also looking for a director of football?
No.
Is that a position that you could see Rangers going down in the future?
I think it's a modern view, but I think where Rangers are right now, I don't think we can have the luxury of it, not only from a financial perspective, but I think that it would really be counterproductive. We don't really have a squad situation at the moment that I think would allow us that. We've got to get a manager in who can also coach and develop players. So there's a lot of work to be done, and I think it is important that the individual that comes in has the right level of authority to meet the objectives that we've got over the next couple of seasons.
You said a couple of weeks ago that you had no figure in mind regarding your own personal investment as to what you would want. Do you have that figure in mind now, given the fact that you also said that Rangers would require around about £30 million between 20 and 30 to move forward?
That hasn't changed. I think the only thing that's changed in terms of my personal thoughts over the last couple of weeks is perhaps the acceleration of that. I think it is very, very important that we win the league this year. Therefore, when I was looking a couple of weeks ago at measuring that over a period of time, I think it's probably the right thing to perhaps overinvest this season to make sure that we do comfortably come out of the league and have at least a fairly strong squad going into next season that could probably be topped up over the next couple of windows.
Do you have a figure in mind then as to what that will take to actually win the league next year?
No, because it's based on a number of other things that are outside our control. It would depend on the ability to renegotiate the commercial arrangements. It would depend on the level of season ticket uptake. It would depend on whether we repay the £5 million loan. So what I'm saying is the investment must be whatever it takes to comfortably win the league and to build a squad that we believe can substantially take us forward into the following season.
How much do you hope to earn by way of season ticket revenues in it within the budget for next season?
I hope to sell out the season tickets.
That would bring in what in revenue?
If we sold out, we'd bring in about probably 12 to 13 million in season ticket money.
Can I ask how much your business or the club's business plan has been affected with the team's failure to reach the top flight?
I think the business plan, in a certain sense, has improved. I think that the risk profile to the club in terms of the 3-year planning going up, it was obviously very, very high. If you look at I think it's fair to say the level of the squad and the number of people getting out of the squad, if we had to go up and start competing in the Premier League in a couple of weeks with a new manager and with more than half of a new team, then I think that would have been quite awkward and probably far more demanding. So at least we now have the opportunity, given we're really here to rebuild the club for a longer period of time, to take advantage of the opportunity that we now have of being in the Championship. And we've now got 3 transfer windows as opposed to 1 to get the playing squad right. So from a business point of view, the business risk is reduced because we've stayed down. As a fan, obviously I'd rather we were up this season, but from a business point of view, it's not all doom and gloom in terms of spending another season in the Championship.
You say this is your vision for the club. Let us know then, when you've already put a £1.5 million loan through one of your companies, when are we going to see the next tranche of your money, and at what stages will it be?
I think we will need money now because we're going to have to beef up the squad. So we're going to get a manager in, and I think the immediate mandate to the manager is to he's going to have to have a sizable number of additional players coming in, and coming in at a level that we believe should be competitive in the Premier League. So I would expect, depending on the players that are available and the players that we bring in, there'll be a fairly substantial investment required within the next couple of months.
That's a personal investment.
It'd be personal for me, but also, as you're aware, there are other investors, so it's more than just me.
Sure, but it gives an indication. You're saying this is your vision for the club. It gives an indication of how much you will invest and what time period that will be invested.
Well, I've just responded to that. I mean, I think we're saying we don't know that. A lot will depend on the season ticket uptake. A lot will depend on the situation with the Sports Direct loan. So whether we have to, a lot will depend on where we are in the league in December. If we were leading the league comfortably, which hopefully would be the situation, then there might be a greater tendency to wait for the summer transfer window. If it was quite tight, then we might spend more money in December. But basically the mandate is, if you want to look at a funding plan, the funding plan is to spend whatever it takes to win the Championship next year and to have at least a nucleus of a squad that can move up into the Premier League.
Where is the club with regard to Sports Direct, and have there been any developments on that front?
There's been no developments at this point, but we have started a process of engagement.
And that was with Mike Ashley himself? Or?
No, that would be with Sports Direct.
You're here to sell season tickets. You just said that you'd like to see season tickets sold out completely. If there's any fans thinking on the back of the failure to get promotion that they might not be thinking about renewing their season tickets, what would your message to them be?
I think the message to the fans is that that there's been a big focus on investment in the club, and I think that what we already have is we've got a board that I think the fans can trust. I think we've already demonstrated the investment in the club in the sense that the club did need money and it was immediately put in by the investors. And I think I'm hoping that the fans also understand that they have to be co-investors in the club. It's very, very important that the fans invest, because we're not only looking at the next couple of years where, to repeat, there is an undertaking for the investors to fund the shortfall, but it's also important that we get Rangers back on a sustainable basis, competing with Celtic. And Rangers' advantage over the years, and why Rangers has been the biggest club in Scotland, has been the mobilisation of the fans by way of season tickets and by way of the commercial and retail operations. So we've really got to get back to that point, because you can't have a situation where Rangers is continually looking for funding from shareholders.
Is there a concern that this failure to get promotion this year will allow, or maybe the job of catching Celtic when you return to the Premiership harder?
I don't think it's harder. I think it's delayed by a year, but I think it's easier. I think that to have gone up this year and had to bring in a new management team and bring in virtually a whole team would have been very, very hard. At least now we have got, I repeat, 3 transfer windows, so we can come in, we can get the new management structure settled in and start to improve the squad now. But we've got 3 phases of looking to improve the squad, whereas if we'd gone up, we'd have had to have virtually done that immediately. So I regard it as being delayed but easier.
Dave, would you accept that it's difficult perhaps to persuade some to sign up for season tickets when there is uncertainty about who the manager will be, what shape the squad will be in at this stage?
I think that's always the situation, because even when you have managers, there's concerns about managers with some of the fans. So I think that what we're looking at here is a recognition of the circumstance I think we find ourselves in, and I think what hopefully will sway the fans again is the belief as to the people who are running the club now, the fact they are seeing we are putting our hands in our own pockets and putting money into the club, and we're asking the fans to support us and trust us. It's awkward for the club. One can't deny that. It's obvious to say that it's awkward to be in a situation that we find ourselves in, where there's a new executive management team coming into the club, there's a new football management team coming into the club, and there's the need to essentially go out and acquire virtually a new football team. It is awkward, but it is the reality. It is where we are today, and it's something we have to deal with.
You mentioned Sports Direct's contracts, that the process has begun almost tentatively to try and discuss that. What's the reaction been from Sports Direct? What incentive are you giving them to renegotiate those deals? Because on face value, you say, well, why would they?
I think why would they is, for them it's about business as well. I think the arrangement cannot be working for Sports Direct. Rangers have gone from a period where Rangers were selling 500,000 shirts and was the biggest club in the UK to selling about 50,000 shirts at the moment. And I think the reason for that is partly because of the events over the last couple of years, but it's also partly that the fans don't believe that a sufficient amount of value from the commercial activities is going back into the club. And until we're in a position from the board perspective to feel confident enough to come to the fans and say we now have an arrangement that we believe is fair to the club, then I wouldn't expect the fans to support it at levels much higher than they were getting at the moment. I'm hoping to see the season ticket situation differently, because clearly all of the money from season tickets is going into the football side of the club.
Is the season ticket money relevant to how much you personally will invest?
Yes, absolutely.
Can you explain that then as to the reasons for it?
Yeah, the reasons are that if we're looking at a situation where we're saying the club must go up and win the league next season, if the season ticket money is less, then we'll have to put in more. If the season ticket money is more, we can put in less. So it really is a question of phasing the money over the next 3 years. I think I've given an indication that we require a level of financing over the next 3 years. Now that level of financing will vary depending on the volume of the season ticket sales. It's just simple maths.
You also mentioned that you may need to overinvest next year. Is that a risk? A financial risk?
It's not a financial risk. It's overinvest in terms of the timing. So what I was suggesting there is that we may accelerate the investment. So rather than sit back at the moment and say we think we've got a squad that is sufficient to win the league, perhaps overinvest in advance of the next season and bring some players in earlier to make sure, in fact, that we win the league this year. So it's an overinvestment in terms of accelerating the cash flow.
How can you guarantee, though, with that level of investment that it will work on the pitch? That's what was getting that by way of risk.
Well, you can't guarantee, but clearly there is a very, very high correlation between the amount of wages you spend and success, particularly at the championship level. The fact is, even without a major investment into Rangers at this point in view, Rangers' purchasing power in terms of wages is still substantially higher than anything else in the championship. The challenge comes the following year when we get back up to Premier League and we've got to compete with some of the bigger clubs, particularly Celtic.
The players who are out of contract in the season, are any of them still with the club?
No.
So you need a new captain as well?
Need a new captain? Well, there's pretty much a new everything coming into the club.
Is there a set, I mean, it's obviously difficult without a manager in place, but have you and the board set a figure in terms of we need a minimum of X on a player budget for a start?
No, I think our concern is more the players. I think we need the quality of players. One is not going to be irresponsible in terms of the cost, but I think right now we're not putting a financial number to it. We're actually saying we have to do what it takes. So there is a recognition that if we take if you look at the squad last year, the squad last year did not perform to the level required in the championship. You've then lost 11 of the players. So it's just obvious with the squad that we've got left, there's going to have to be a substantial investment in players. And the mandate to the manager is going to be, do not get players that will help us win the championship, get players that could compete in the Premier League. That's very, very important to us. So all the signings that we make now will be with a view to the following year, not just for this year. So in that sense, you could argue it's an overinvestment because it might be more than is necessary to win the championship. But having said that, by having the nucleus of a squad at the end of the season going forward to the Premier League, then the risk for the following season is greatly reduced.
You said that there will obviously be a knock-on effect in terms of how much you may invest, other significant shareholders may invest based on where the club is playing next season. If we were to presume there would be a significant increase in season ticket money this season, had Rangers qualified for the Premiership, you'll have taken a significant hit on that. Does that mean you're going to have to up the ante from your own personal stake?
I'm not really sure that there's a significant impact one way or another on the season tickets from that.
Would you not have increased the prices significantly if you were playing in the Premiership next season?
Well, we would have, but we'd also have had to increase the cost structure significantly. So I'm not sure in a net benefit it really makes much difference to the club. It makes a difference to the fans in terms of it'd been much more interesting for them playing against Celtic and Aberdeen, etc. I think for them it makes a difference, but I think the increase in ticket prices would have been more than offset by the increase in the required cost structure to compete.
Okay. Dave, you also said recently that Rangers were one of the strongest financially based black football clubs in world football. Do you stand by that statement? And how do you get to that in your head when they're loss making every month at the moment?
Well, I think a lot of clubs are loss making. That doesn't necessarily make you not financially sustainable. I think in Rangers' case right now, they have a situation where they've got investors that are willing to fund the deficit, and Rangers is virtually ungeared. I mean, it's certainly in a far stronger financial position than any time I've been involved with the club in the last 15 years.
Would you accept though that they're only, in your case, what you're saying, financially strong because you have financial backers who are putting money in basically on a month-by-month basis at the moment?
No, but also we've got no debt. I mean, you'll go a long way to find another club, certainly anything near Rangers size, that doesn't have substantial debt. Rangers doesn't have that. It's kind of by default, but we are where we are. And the fact is, there's a clean balance sheet. The stadium is owned, Murray Park is owned, the facilities are owned. So from that point of view, I think Rangers is relatively ungeared when you compare it to other clubs. So you've got a balance sheet that's ungeared, and you've got investors in place who are going to make funds available for the next 3 years. So financially, it's very sound.
Are you therefore saying there isn't a programme in place for reducing running costs of the club?
For reducing the running costs?
Yeah.
No, we're going to increase the running costs of the club.
So, and how do you think that will work in a 3-year plan? Do you think it's sustainable?
It's not sustainable over the next 3 years. I think that's the point we've made repeatedly. Over the next 2 years, the club requires funding from investors. That's why I'm here. It's not sustainable. The idea is to have it sustainable at the end of the 3-year period, not during the 3-year periods. It's clearly not during the 3-year period because, as we all know, we're running a deficit, but there's also the youth, there's the infrastructure. It's not just about what you're going to see on the football field. Part of the plan over the next 3 years is also to invest. The scouting system is gone, the youth academy is gone, so that is all going to be happening in parallel over the 3-year period.
Can I go back to the managerial issue, if I may? Have you identified your preferred candidate? You say there's probably a list of 5, but have you identified your preferred candidate?
No.
You haven't. But you've spoken to all 5 that are on the short list.
Yes.
Right. Playing in the Championship next season, has that put people off taking the job?
Yes.
Can you give us an idea who or how many?
No, that'd be confidential. I couldn't give names, but I can say yes. Yes, there were potential managers who dropped out of the race because we stayed down in the Championship.
And what effect does that have then on Stuart McCall by not taking you to the top flight in terms of getting the job long term?
I think it doesn't. I think Stuart came in a situation. It wasn't his squad. I think he came in to help out. I think he made a great effort, and he's certainly not being negatively judged by that performance over the short period of time. His attitude was fantastic, so there could be no criticism of Stuart at all. The decision that I think the board has got to make is, what is the right person for the club for the next 3 years, not just for the championship season.
If you've got at least 11 players to replace Dave, is that process underway at all, or is that going to simply have to wait until a new manager comes in?
It's underway in the sense already there's an early identification of players who we think might be available, but in terms of the actual signing, I think it would be correct to get the manager's appointment out of the way first.
You mentioned that the scouting system doesn't really exist. Who is identifying those players?
We've had some assistance from other players, we've had some assistance with some previous management, so we're just doing the best we can while waiting for the manager, but hopefully part of the manager selection process is you're going to try and get a manager who can bring some of that knowledge with him and have some of his own ideas.
Although you're a obviously big Rangers fan, as are the other investors in the club, you're also a businessman. When do you expect to get a return on your investment, and the other investors, when do they expect a return?
I can't speak for the others, but I'm not viewing it in terms of getting a return on my investment. I'm really looking more putting in something into the club, so it's not. If I was looking at it from an investment perspective, then I wouldn't be doing this. It's not why I'm here. It's a club I grew up with. I love. It was in a situation where it was going through very, very difficult times, and watching from South Africa, it was clear that no one really was stepping into the breach and giving the level of direction. So it's something that I felt that I could do, and I'm really genuinely doing it for the love of the club.
Dave, you said there wouldn't be a sporting director or a director of football, would be a manager, assistant manager. Was your opinion or the board's opinion swayed at all after speaking to former managers that that's not the way to go down? Because there was a suggestion that's perhaps a path the club was going to go down?
I think there's two issues. I think the one is whether the club philosophically over time would look at the director of football role. And I think that's something certainly that hasn't been ruled out. But for where we are at the moment, with all the changes we have to make, we think it's more important that we get someone in and we back that person. And we're really more interested in getting an individual who we think that we can trust. And I think to bring someone in now and add to that a director of football role, I think would be, quite frankly, redundant, certainly for the season coming up.
And there was a suggestion that you've consulted Mark Potter, Walter Smith on this front. Can you just clarify those positions, please?
Who is Mark Potter?
All right, so you haven't spoken to him then?
Never heard of him.